Hey guys, Luna here, and welcome back to our life. We just completed the lemonade, and now we're gonna actually go to the siblings. Because I'm curious about curious even though I've already done it. You stretch your arms out as high as you stepped in the spot on the wooden floor where the last rays of sunshine landed. The remaining warmth of the day was still enough for it to tickle your skin. You felt pleasantly full from dinner, and the only thing left that was on your plate was waiting for a knock. Derek closed your door as he came in behind you. You were going to spend the afternoon together, and you knew his mom would arrive to pick him up any minute. Thanks for having me over, Luna. You don't have to thank me for that. And why I'm not surprised you tried taking dishwashing duty away from Elizabeth. Derek pressed his palms together, flipping each hand over and under in a loop. You could almost be viewed as a mock washing gesture, but he was probably being awkward. I thought it'd be fair. I didn't help with the cooking. You're too much. Thanks. Oh, Derek, Mr. Manners. Before you can settle enough to even take a seat, a pounding scent of thuds cracked the laid-back mood. Derek scrunched his limbs inward from the shock. He'd been keeping an ear out for that exact sound, but it was completely unnecessary. Tourists half across town wouldn't miss that blare. The racket was followed by the door Derek had so carefully closed moments ago, roughly swinging open. Obviously, the person on the other side wasn't Miss Suzère. It was your older sister. With a huff and an eye roll, she delivered a brief message as fast as she could spit out.
Come on.
Derek's mom's here. Mom's made me come and get you about it. Why did you give us a knock if you were going to give us a chance for an answer? She gave you a stink eye, but didn't waste a single extra word on you. In one motion, she curled her fingers over the edge of the door, twisted around, and yanked the door shut. The books and boxes on your desk shelves shook. Derek's teeth clattered too. He whispered through a grimace.
Man.
Want to trade Nicholas or George for her? I'll take both if you want. Nicholas is 6, and George is 10. Elizabeth is 15. Almost even exchange of sibling existence years. No deal, sorry. She gets extra grouchy sometimes, right now for example. Derek's shoulders slowly eased down to the resting position, but his expression was pinched. He began to whisper while glancing the way your sister went. His voice was hushed, secretive, almost afraid Elizabeth might slap the door open again and find out he was talking about her. Do you think it's about the dishes, or... I don't know. You can only give a half-hearted answer. You struggled to understand why Elizabeth acted out the way she did a lot of the time. But your mom's waiting. We gotta go so you can get home. Right, Luna? Derek's mouth opened and closed without saying anything else. He lifted a hand to try gesturing, but dropped that without getting anywhere. It made you raise an eyebrow. Yeah? His bright green eyes squinted into narrow slits, but you could still see the way they darted around. His gaze was trained on the ground, scanning across the floorboards, though everything that really mattered was probably inside his actual head.
Well,
I was wondering. He paused again. Derek's hands balled into tight fists, and he let out a breath and finally asked the question. Are you busy tomorrow? You blinked. That was all? No. The simple answer made Derek flinch. It might not be all.
really?
Yeah, really. That's what I said. Then he spread his fingers and arms in not quite a shrug. Would you want to come over to my house for the day? The tone of his voice and pose he took was casual in a scripted way. He definitely wanted to feel like it was totally optional, no problem if you turned him down. You couldn't tell if that was the end or just another point of process, but you were going along for the ride. I can probably do that. I'll have to ask my mom's. Derek leaned in closer, slowly opening his eyes wider. Some kind of suspense was growing.
Alright.
He dipped his head in tiny, repetitive nods. The look on his face went distant again, the way it did when he was thinking deeply. Then, finally, he flung his hands up to complete the shrug, and spoke the question he's been stalling on. Would you want to come over tonight instead and sleep over? We could, camp out in my living room. It'd be fun, our own little party. Your confusion was compounded. I know that's... He's blushing, that's adorable. I know that's pretty out of nowhere. If you can't make it or don't wanna or don't anything, I'm totally cool with it. I don't know, maybe.
I gotcha.
That's okay. Thanks, Derek, but we should go downstairs now. Yeah, definitely. My mom is waiting for us. The two of you left your bedrooms and bounded down one stair after another. Your warm greeting caused you to hit a landing point on the first floor.
Hello.
Hello, Derek and Luna. Your two moms and Derek's one mom was gathered in the entryway of the living room. Derek reached out a hand out toward her and waved it. Hi, Mom. Well, hey, welcome to our house, even though you've been here a few minutes already. After smiling at him and at you, Derek's mom turned her head over to your shoulder to speak to your parents. Thank you again for taking care of him. Derek uncharacteristically broke the polite decorum by interrupting his mom. It got her attention, and she let him speak. I had something I want to ask you and Miss Mare. Oh? What is it, sweetie? He had the attention and encouragement of all three mothers. One on the stage, Derek didn't beat around the bush the way he did before.
Please?
I was wondering if Luna could come with us and spend the night at my house, please? He knew your moms well enough to foresee a potential concern reactions, and so Derek sped through the extra terms to make sure they heard that before answering. We'll set up in the living room instead of my room. My parents and brothers would still be around. People could keep an eye on us. As expected, Mom weren't instantly thrilled. They were shocked at the possibility. And while he's successfully avoiding the first obvious pitfall, your mom still had completely different apprehensions to fret about.
I don't know.
That's pretty last minute. You're about to walk out the door. You couldn't have Luna impose. Derek's mom stayed strangely silent after he popped the question. She fixed her stare at her son, crossed her arms against her chest, and shook her head at him. But the shake didn't mean no. It had another meaning that maybe only Cesare could get. Still, she smiled.
Yes.
We can find Luna a place for tonight. If there's no family conflict with that, and they would like to come over, of course. Both of your moms turned their faces right toward one another on instinct. They're both astounded that Derek's mom didn't mind. Huh? Mom scratched her head over it. Derek had made a huge request with no advance warning, and Mrs. Eyre had 3 children to care for already. It seemed unreasonable to her. For your ma, however, a light began to sparkle in your eyes, and when she noticed you looking, she held your gaze. Luna, do you want to go? Yeah, so much. Ma wrapped both her arms around one of her wives.
In that case?
I see. I think that'll be alright, just this time. Really? Her mom sputtered. She clearly hadn't gotten the page of the script. Mom had an encouraging pat on the top of her head for her troubles. She only remained absolutely perplexed, mouth open, eyes wide. Mom could only process enough to realize that she had become the odd mom out. She probably didn't know exactly what she was doing, but Mom turned to look at you. Pack it up, Luna. You wouldn't want to keep them waiting. You snapped your gaze to Derek. He had done the same. The two of you shared a matching look of astonishment. It was almost identical to the gesture that your moms had made when Mrs. Eyre first accepted Derek's proposition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Mare. Thank you. The deal was finalized with a crisp clap from Mrs. Ayres. Pamela's right. You should get all that you need for the night. You're coming along for the ride. I'll help. Neither of you gave them time to change their minds. Ran back over to your room and began to pack in a whirlwind. As you shoved clothes into your backpack, Derek hovered in the center of the room. He fidgeted with energy that was going unused. Can you get me a spare toothbrush? There's an extra one for traveling in the hall closet.
I'm on it.
Gotcha. He was gone in a flash. You made sure to get the basics and something you personally couldn't go without. Your favorite stuffed animal. You made a note in your head to ask your moms to tell Cove where you'd be since there wasn't time to explain in person. But then you remembered a conversation you had with him that morning. You had plans the next day and wouldn't be around for a lot anyways. Derek's invite had come at a convenient time. Derek's returned in the sprint, a toothbrush held over his head in triumph. With the grin, you threw it in the overnight bag. That was enough for you to get by for a short trip. You zipped it up, hooked it around your shoulder, and went out the door. You checked it off the final requirements to leave. For the second time in the matter of minutes, you rushed down the stairs in a flurry of steps, with Derek close enough that you almost stumbled into him. At the bottom, you came and stand in front of the mob group. We're ready.
Good night.
Perfect. Good luck, kiddos. Have a great time. Gently, rhythmically, Ma ran her hand over your hair. All her precious hopes for this year's safety and happy ebbed in her fingertips into you.
Take care.
Good night, Luna. Take care. Night. See you. Mrs. Zare and Derek gave their own goodbyes, and afterwards they returned to the minivan that had brought them here. Then, almost unbelievably, you slid into the vehicle with them to go on the impromptu sleepover. The chill of the squeaky leather against your hands and the persistent smell of animal crackers crumbs kept you grounded in reality. Derek bounced against the back seat like a kid on a roller coaster and clicked his belt into place for the ride back to his condo. You strapped into you. You never could imagine the evening taking you down to this literal and metaphorical road, but you were eager to find out what happened next. The sun continued to sink as Derek's mom drove down the highway when you arrived at your destination, so had night. The condo complex was nicely lit and well maintained. The three of you easily made your way to Derek's house and went right in. Slipping into the set of jangling keys into a nearby wall hook, Mrs. Zare called out to the hall from the empty living room. We're home. You braced your ears for the second sibling caused commotion of the evening that you knew it would come.
Derek's back!
Nicholas tore out of his bedroom and thundered across the floor until he had his arms gripped around his big brother's legs. Even with all the force of a 6-year-old, Nicholas could muster, it was hardly a bump against Derek. He absorbed the impact calmly, giving his little sibling a pat on the head for his troubles. Yeah, we're back. The two remaining boys of his family came from the same room at the snail's pace in comparison to the first, but soon enough Mrs. Zare and George were there with you too.
Welcome back.
George rubbed the growing sleepiness from one eye and took the scene with the undisguised confusion.
Why?
Why is Luna here? I'm sleeping over. What, Mom? She answered matter-of-factly. Luna's staying over with us for tonight. George clamped his mouth shut. He might have had something to say about the spur-of-the-moment plans, but was obedient enough to not argue with his mother. Mrs. Zare ever had a childlike Leonard's expression.
Oh.
Very good. Derek cut into his dad's excitement with a reply a little too soon. A completely normal word to say, but it had been put on fast forward. Yeah, it's great, thanks, Dad.
Anyways,
we're gonna go camp out in the living room. Can you borrow the tent? Derek's hands were balled into fists and held up his knee's collarbone over zealously, kind of protectively. His father looked down at him with a familiar, serene expression. You knew exactly where he'd seen it before when Mrs. Zare placed his hand on the top of Derek's head. You took care of Derek the same way Derek took cared for Nicholas. Of course. And the gesture worked exactly the same charm on Derek. His shoulders relaxed, his expression softened slightly. The pounding nerves that had been building faded. Camping? Nicholas shouted without warning. The entire exchange held no interest for the youngest one until that moment. That's right, Nico. Derek reached down and carefully placed his hands on Nicholas's shoulders to nudge him off. Derek went willingly, giddily repeating the same word, this time in amazed confirmation rather than a question. Camping! With a thumbs up, Derek stood tall. The plan was in motion. Luna, you can put your bag down and sit if you want to. I'll grab some other stuff. When moving past you, Derek took a second lean in to whisper lighthearted reassurance.
it's okay.
Little bros will go to bed before we do, and Mom's going to be watching them tomorrow. You're not here to babysit them the whole time again. Okay, cool. The whole group broke off into 3 sets. Derek ran to his room with Nicholas right on his heels, while Mrs. and Mrs. Zare left the space to the kids, returning to their own bedrooms. You and George stayed where you were. George shuffled over to the kitchen counter to sit on a bar stool. He wasn't helping, but he wasn't getting in the way. George was more sensitive than he let on, and you made sure to smile reassuringly over at him, so you knew he was wanted there. His lips quirked up just a little in response. Then you took your own seat on the couch and got unpacking. The first thing you pulled out of your bag was your stuffed animal. You placed that on the coffee table for safekeeping. You kept busy sorting through it all until Derek returned with the goods. The 2 pillows were under each arm. He had a few brightly patterned blankets draped over his shoulders, and the rope loop of a big nylon pack was hooked around one wrist. Nicholas supported the effort by carrying one long pillow. He clutched it tight to his chest as best he could, considering the pillow was about as tall as his whole torso. Derek piled up the supplies on the opposite side of the couch from where you were. Nicholas opened his arms wide to let the pillows drop on the floor with a soft puff. It made Derek chuckle proudly.
Okay.
I'm gonna put together the tent. Nicholas, George, do you want to help?
I'll help. I'm gonna put together the tent.
Nicholas bounded up around Derek in absolute eagerness. In the distance, George pushed away from the counter.
Yeah.
His expression was flat and wide-eyed, but there's still a hopeful rise in his voice as he got up from the bar stool. I'm here too, remember? I'm helping. Let's do it. The declaration made you, Derek, Nicholas, and George get to work making heads and tails of the tent. Derek yanked open the clinch in the top of the pack where he walked to the furthest spot in the living room. Everyone followed his lead. He pushed up the semicircle in the basket chair up against the edge of the counter so the tent could get there instead. Yeah, so it'll be in this back corner over here, most likely. Derek dumped the contents of the bag onto the cream rug. He leaned over one foot while kinking the other in the air, reached over and grabbed the instructions that fell out with the rest of the materials. He scanned over the steps briefly, but it was only a refresher. Derek was able to get right into the process. Nicholas was assigned pole control. He kept watching the pile, not letting any roll away, and would pass the tent legs over which they were needed. Stretching the fabric out took the rest of you, George, and Derek each grabbed its side and tugged. Derek had to squeeze himself against the tall, pointed part of the corner. He snickered at the way the leaves curled around his face. Despite that, you got the tent laid out and processed across the ground. The first time Nicholas got to pass a pole, it slapped against the wall in a tiny space you were working in. George covered his ears and ducked. Derek snatched the end out of the air before it can do more damage. The little boy promised to be more careful. He got to keep his job and took it seriously. Piece by piece, the project slowly took shape until it was finally complete. The small, light gray tent sat in full form nestled into the nook of the living room.
Good job, team.
Alright, good job, everybody. As if he'd yell into a cave, an echo of his words followed after. Good job. Nicholas threw his hands in the air with joy. George simply smiled, satisfied. I'm impressed we didn't break it. Derek stuck his fist into his hips and gave the team an encouraging grin. Now we can actually do the indoor camping part of the living room campouts. Derek strode up to the cabin in the corner. He pulled open the translucent doors to fiddle around with something inside. A poppy tune blared out. He turned on a CD player. Nicholas leapt onto the couch and swung his arms in the air to dance. George swayed his shoulders to the bubblegum notes. Their big brother wasn't done yet. He made a beeline for the kitchen cupboard next. This time, the mood setter Derek retrieved was a pillow-sized bag of puffy marshmallows. Catch! That was the only warning before he set the marshmallow bag sailing across the room in perfect arc. George managed to snatch it from the air without a problem. The top of the bag was twisted around and sealed with a blue clip. The opening side was stretched from the process of twisting and twirling repeatedly. It had been well appreciated so far. George undid the clip and set it aside on the coffee table. His tongue pressed against the corner of his lips as he dug his hand deep into the bag for just the right one. Nicholas tilted over from the cushion into the bag to fill his tiny fist with the 2 marshmallows. He crushed them between his fingers, the fluffy confection squeezing through the cracks. It was really the party. Derek had put his hands on the cupboard handle and shouted over the music. Do you like marshmallows? You plucked one out of the bag and ate it as your answer. The cupboard door swung closed and there was nothing more there to obstruct your view of the bright grin on his face anymore. He finally joined the rest of the base camp, which was the couch at the moment. George, get me one of those too. Without another warning, George simply flicked a marshmallow at his brother, and same as before, Derek grabbed it mid-air. He bit one piece out of the top edge, chewing thoughtfully.
Okay.
There's no TV while camping, so having a sleepover movie wouldn't make sense. With a swallow of a marshmallow and a snap of his fingers, Derek empathetically declared a grand idea. We'll play an ad-lib game. I'll make up a story and the three of you can fill in some blanks and make it complete. George rolled around passively. He had finished his first treat and was poking around for another perfect selection. Okay. Nicholas smiled a big white smile, but it wasn't pearly teeth. His entire mouth was full of marshmallow mush. You took that reaction as yes. The little ones were on board. Yeah, it's gonna be good. Alright, let me think. We need a noun, a thing you can drive or ride on, a shape, a color, a food, and a drink. Nicholas gulped painfully, forcing down way too much marshmallow goop all at once, but he couldn't let anyone beat him to the punch. A truck! A truck! Nicholas's eyes were wide, and he practically vibrating from the sugar high mixed with the chance to add in truck to the story. Derek rubbed his back complacently. That's the ride, George? The middle child plucked at the frayed edge of the marshmallow bag. It might have taken him longer to come up with something than the youngest, but he did contribute an idea. Blue. Cool. We got a color, Luna. Let's see. For the food, it's marshmallow. Actually, no. I want to do cookies. Gotcha. He shifted his focus back to the boys. Derek's expression and the entire way he carried himself was different when he was speaking to them. It reminded you of a teacher interacting with his students. George, Nicholas, give me some more words.
Oh.
Hexagon.
Nice.
That's a good one. That's a shape. Apple juice.
Cool.
Perfect. That's a drink. Derek continued to warmly watch over his little siblings, but the words he spoke were for you. Luna, you gotta give us the last one a noun. Yeah, the noun should be person, place, or thing. I want to do stuffed animal, but I can't, because I don't think that's enough space for that. How about a couch? Couch. His expression somehow softened even more. Awesome. Derek pulled his chest back and folded his arms. He smirked, bronze ankled, and eye squinted.
Alright.
I can now tell you the story of Baby Castle. Nicholas stamped his feet rapidly on the couch. He was absolutely squealing from the premise alone.
What?
Baby Castle? Yes, that's right. In a big open field there was a stone fortress that was Baby Castle. Everyone who lived there was a little baby, but they didn't need any adults. The greatest treasure was a giant golden couch at the center of the courtyard. They were always vigilant to protect it from the greedy hands of the grown-ups. George snorted. His mouth and cheeks began to pull upwards. Then one day, someone came to the gates of the castle on their truck. It was a man, not even a baby or even a kid. He had a hexagon-shaped hat and shaped head and a fancy top hat. He was knocking on the door, demanding to be let in. They were just babies and needed supervision. It was a blue alert, and the guards were rushing to their stations. The first line of defense was their cookie catapults. It was loaded up and then fired. Bullseye! The cookies knocked the top hat off his head, but the hexagon-faced man wasn't deterred. He used his giant grown-up legs to climb over the wall. There was panic in the castle. He had to go after their golden couch. Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot with precision. His hands had gone up in front of him with his palms facing forward. He looked like a goalie of a soccer game. But the babies weren't beaten yet. Their squirt gun battalion lined up as soon as the adults stepped foot over the side and was pelted with apple juice. He summoned back, and the gatekeeper opened up the door while he was blinded. He got pushed right out of the back with his truck. The guards gave one more shove, and the man with his truck and without a hat slid down the hill far away. The castle was saved. Babies and their couch were still free. Hooray! The ends. A matching pair of cheers filled the air. Nicholas and George were thrilled by the yarn Derek had spun for them. Honestly, I'm impressed how well Derek could improvise. He was a guy of many talents. The living room campsite blowout kept rolling from there. Derek turned up the music louder, making sure to skip any track that didn't fit the mood. George and Nicholas swung around the floor to dance. They threw marshmallows in the air and tried catching them with their mouths, and when that got old, they tried to see who could fit the most in their mouths at one time. Derek grooved to the beat and tapped his toes around the collected treats they missed, picked up the pillows knocked from the floor, and patted their backs with the stuffed faces made them cough. But he was only Mr. Responsible. Derek took his own shot at the marshmallow mouthful competition and blew his little brothers out of the water. You took your turn telling your own Mad Lib story. It was a heart-wrenching tale of love, loss, revenge, and plotted plans, thanks to George's suggestion. It wasn't a dry-eyed in the house when it was when in the end your hero wilted and every leaf fell. As the night continued, Derek moved from the party hotspot to chill out inside the tent. He was on his side, propped up by his elbow. It took a few minutes for Nicholas to notice his brother's disappearance from his sightlines. He knew the moment it happened. He'd been bouncing from cushion to cushion on the couch, but came to a firm stop, sticking his feet deep into place. A helpless pout flickered on Nicholas's face, before almost instantly curved into a sly grin. Nicholas knew the way he could find his favorite person. He leapt from his arm onto the couch to land on the entrance of the tent. From there, he spun forward like a shot straight into Derek, shoving him over on his back with an oof. Derek didn't get up. He flopped his arms out and laid motionless. 3, 2, 1. Derek was down for the count. Nicholas was the winner. Claiming his victory, Nicholas curled up on Derek's flat chest. He tuckered himself out. So you can either be inside the tent or outside the tent. Stretch out a blanket either on the floor, inside the tent, or near the tent. Ball up in the blanket inside the tent or near the tent, or lay down on the blankets on the floor, laid on the floor. I'll probably say ball up on the blankets inside the tent, probably. George wandered over to sit down cross-legged. He had one shoulder in the tent, and the rest of the world was out. Derek's eyes drooped and closed, and he heaved a satisfied sigh.
Sheesh.
I'm too old to keep up with you bros. You can party way harder than me. Honestly, I'm not too surprised with that. He could still muster enough energy to move his hand over his brother's fluffy marshmallow with speckled hair. The little boy snuggled his cheek into his jersey even more. Still cross-legged, George took a hold of his ankles and rocked himself gently backward and forward. The childlike position conflicted how contemplatively his next words were.
I wonder what things will be like when we really are older.
The brother with most days behind him smiled softly when his eyes remained shut. That's easy. 10 years from now, I'm going to be a famous athlete. Nicholas will obviously be the cheer captain at all of my games. Derek's earned a squealing giggle from Nicholas. He even kicked a leg out like a little puppy who got a tummy scratch. George, you'll be my career manager. George stopped his movements, sitting a little taller. A smile pulled out the edges of his mouth.
Obviously.
Luna will be there too. That piqued your own interest. I would. What I be doing? You'd be achieving your dreams. Then his voice drifted off quietly. And the four of us would all be neighbors. You thought that sounded wonderful. He wanted to live next to you. He wanted to be part of your future. Derek, George, and Nicholas, who glanced at each of their faces and felt glad you got to be here. You went to different schools, lived in different towns, had different families, but sometimes you're able to share your worlds with each other. Because honestly, that does sound really, really nice, like being able to just hanging out with friends. But it just depends on where things kind of glide, since it's going to be pretty hard to keep that up after a certain point. And maybe someday Derek's story would come true and you'd even be closer. Who knows? That time, but that wasn't time, not soon. Suzera's parents reappeared to take the younger children off to bed for their own rooms. Despite kneeling as being asleep already, Nicholas grabbed Derek's shirt when its dad reached to pick him up. Derek had one hand on Nicholas's head, pressed the other against the floor, slowly shifting into a sitting position. Nicholas's vice-like grip made it easy to do so without either of them falling over. Well, that's adorable. But hey, it's gonna be fine, little buddy. Derek kept his one hand on... Okay. When he was upright, Derek collected his little brother in his arms fully and shuffled out of the tent. Does sound really nice. This is pretty cool, huh, Nico? Usually I'm all the way in my room, but tomorrow all you'll have to do is open the door and look down the hall and I'll be there. Derek whispered smoothly down on the path back to the bedroom, putting to bed not only the delicate bundle he carried, but also likely the resistance the boy would have put up. George's trail continued behind his other brothers, but he didn't need the extra help. But Derek stood in place. He didn't move until the middle one could come by and up to his side. Give me a second, someone trying to talk to me. Let's see here. Because of my friend of mine talking about some magic stuff. Because it's about some magic stuff, which is pretty cool. George trailed behind his other brothers, but didn't need the extra help. But Derek stood in place. He didn't move until the middle one could come up by his side. Altogether, the three Cesare sons went through the door. He waited in the living room quietly. Maybe a minute or two passed before Derek switched off it with his parents. He came out empty-handed and they went in. He took a wide tiptoeing step over the campsite, his sleepiness from before he was wiped away by a second wind of excitement. Derek had made it back to his tent and put his hand to his mouth, watching the hall like a hawk for any signs from his family.
It's all good.
We gotta change into our pajamas, but we don't have to go to sleep for real. You got to your feet, his eagerness rubbing off on you. The both of you quietly bustled between the bathroom and the living room, finishing all the last-minute prep. Derek's parents lingered on the edge of the hallway until both of you and Derek were completely set. PJs on, teeth brushed, the works. Good night, Derek and Luna.
Good night.
Sleep well and enjoy the great outdoors of the living room. Night, Mom. Night, Dad. Good night. Don't let the bug bites. Mrs. Eyre hit the lights. The condo blinked into darkness. There was footsteps, silence, and the clink of the door opening and shutting. The parents had returned to their own bedroom, this time to turn in for the rest of the night. With the opening and intermission over, part 2 of Derek's and Luna's at-home adventure could begin. Derek went from sitting up perfectly straight, ready for some non-existent interview, to dropping onto his stomach. He screamed around using his elbows. The efforts fluttered the tent and blankets, making soft crinkling sounds. When he positioned himself facing you, Derek had rested his head against the top of one's fist. He grinned keenly. The rest of the family might have been right across the rest of the condo, but this was still the first chance to talk just between yourselves since the sleepover started. You've been waiting for it. Hey, Luna. His cheeks lifted high enough to push the bottom of his eyes as he whispered with a childlike sense of secret sharing.
So,
I was wondering, if you're being totally, completely serious, what would you want to do in the future? Do you have, I don't know, a goal or a dream? Yeah, I do. I like to help people. You're so nice. And honestly, I want to make a lot of money. I can get that. I want to be able to learn a lot too. Knowledge is power. I really want to feel like I'm a responsible adult. That's a good one. And hopefully I'll be able to create things. But it'll be amazing. And it'd be amazing to fall in love. Yeah. I want to be very skilled too. Same. And maybe I'll be famous. Got the star power for sure. But I don't really want to travel all too much. That sort of thing. Cool, thanks for sharing with me. Derek contemplatively rolled over his back, and the arm that had held up his chin was now tucked under his head for support there. Instead, his eyes never broke away from yours despite flipping upside down. He could move as freely as he wanted and was taking full advantage of that. When his siblings were around, he had to work with 8 limbs and 2 heads thanks to Nicholas's literal attachment to him. And that got your train of thought fully on track of siblings. You opened your mouth and said, "Siblings are complicated." Derek made a valiant attempt to nod along with his lopsided position. Agreed. Would you want... actually no. How does it feel to be the oldest? Busy, I guess. Derek chuckled. It's kinda like a part-time job. I gotta look out for them. My parents aren't always making me do that, but I feel like I've always gotta do it. Makes sense, sorry. Don't be, it's all good. The air in the near complete darkness felt warm and comfortable, but the atmosphere began to change. It was too subtle to say exactly why, but enough for you to notice. Luna? Derek reversed his position again, getting on his stomach. His arms were crossed over the floor in front of him, and he rested his cheeks down against them. Derek's eyes were on the ground too.
Was it annoying?
Would it be weird to ask if you're having fun? I am having fun. Yeah, that's great. He clicked his heels together in rhythm, soft taps and rustles of the blankets, 1 and 2, and a 3-4 in quick succession, and then repeated again. Derek mumbled into his forearm. I was just really hoping this would be a nice time.
Forget it.
It's nothing. But Derek sprung up on his palms, bringing his head up to your level and beaming directly at you. Haven't you watched anything cool recently? George and I have been showing Nicholas a lot of great stuff. He couldn't see before because he was too little when he came out. He kicked the ball in the new direction and had too high of a defense for you to maneuver it back. But it was alright. You could talk to Derek about anything. You and Derek continued to bounce from topic to topic. You quietly spoke your thoughts out in the air while hidden away in the rest of the world in your camp. It went on throughout the night until you realized your eyes were opening to the morning sunlight. But there's no peace in Derek's household.
Woo!
It's morning! Actually gonna need to take a second to drink some water. After giving his war cry, Nicholas barreled from his room and catapulted himself into the tents. Derek wrestled with Nicholas on the blankets and tickled fight. It was a memorable way to begin the day. For breakfast, there was a cupboard full of different cereals and instant oatmeal packs to choose from, plus fruits, berries, and nuts to top it off if you wanted. Each bowl was prepared to its owner's specifications, either by themselves or by Mrs. Eyre for those who were too little to reach everything. You got... I'm gonna say cereal with marshmallows. I feel more marshmallows can never hurt, and... Ooh, added peanut butter. That's, like, normally I would never do this, but, like, because it's a video game, I'm just doing it because it sounds tasty. Blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries, and that was everything. Derek chuckled, blowing on the steam of his freshly cooked oatmeal. Glad someone's using that. You checked in and she was right. Every Suzerain had chosen oatmeal that morning. Stirring her own bowl of hot oats, Mrs. Eyre joined the conversation.
Well...
Dad eats it, and Derek's mom leaned over the edge of the marble counter so she could whisper to you. So does Nico, as a snack, when Derek isn't home. Oh. You glanced down the hallway, expecting Derek's dad to join in the family soon, but Mrs. Eyre let you know how Mr. Cesare was very sneakily went past you a couple hours ago when you were sleeping. Derek swallowed a spoonful of peach oatmeal with blueberries to note how his dad had to commute. Derek's mom nodded before moving the conversation forward. I'll take you home in the evening. The younger ones can stay with Mr. Cesare then. We'll have a peaceful ride. Your moms know it'll be a little late. Worked it out yesterday while you were packing. And I'll be running out errands until then. I'll be bringing the kids. You two can enjoy your time however you choose.
Is that fine?
Is that fine? Derek stuck his spoon toward the ceiling, gave you a thumbs up from his bar stool. It's peachy. Derek put his other fist on the counter. Double thumbs up. Soon you learned another new thing about Derek's family. His dad commuted very early, and all hands were tasked with cleaning up whenever there were guests or not. The five of you made quick work at breakfast. Then Mrs. Eyre, with some more assistants, helped Derek corral George and Nicholas into the minivan to act as helpers during her daily tasks. George could properly fill that role, while Nicholas is more of an honorary helper who still needed more support than he gave. The title was still exciting enough for him to release Derek for 1 minute, so he could be strapped into his car seat for the drive. From one job to another, you and Derek were left alone to put the living room back into its proper order. First, your belongings were collected and put aside to making sure nothing got mixed in with the other supplies. Then blankets were stuffed back into Derek's room and the spare closets, and any loose marshmallows that were discovered to have escaped being devoured and ended up on the floor were thrown in the trash. Your campsite became a hollow shell of what it once was. It didn't end so quickly, but a short adventure in the great outdoors of that Cesare living room was better than none. It was still a minor miracle that you got to come. You didn't forget that. Lastly, the two of you worked as a team to break down the tent itself. You slipped out each of the poles, retracted them to their smaller size, and began to get them packed away into the sturdy bag they came from the night before. When folding it up one of the legs, Derek lightheartedly chatted with you.
Oh man.
Oh, that's so exciting. The whole day. We can do anything before you gotta go. Walk to the park, watch a movie, get some food somewhere. He hummed along with the bounce of his pose. He has plenty of fun just doing regular chores with you. The good mood was infectious. It's great. I was just thinking about how I was surprised my mom's let me come today. Out of nowhere, Derek twitched like he was hit by a bolt. His hands flipped over protectively, and the pole fumbled out of his grasp. It clattered against the wooden floors. The sound of the sharp made Derek wince. He gave a meek apology while the leg rolled back against his sneaker just as pitifully. Sorry. Derek bent his knees and gripped his shirt at the edge on the way down, before he reached out to pick up what he dropped. What are you saying? That was pretty off. You didn't miss the blaring sign complete with warning sounds that something was up, but he obviously wasn't comfortable, so he tried to let go. I was just talking about my mom's. Usually they're really strict about sleepovers. Can't do it out of nowhere. It's a plain thing. Having it camped out in the living room must have helped a lot. Gave a bit of a shrug and scanned around for another piece to put away. Gonna have to keep that trick in mind. Yeah, that makes sense. They are like that. Derek fiddled uselessly with a dark gray boba foot at the end of the pole. He was planning to keep busy. You were wondering if you remembered what the two of you were supposed to be busy with. It wasn't going away, whether you ignored it or not. Do you think they didn't like you? Did you think they didn't like you, or that I meant something else?
No.
Oh, forget it. It was dumb and doesn't matter. He threw the words at you. It was final and harsher than you expected from Derek. The sharp edge of it wasn't for you. The part was directed toward himself. You never slept out over his house before. That's been your guess for why it might have been a little awkward. There's definitely more to it, he frowned. I don't care if it's dumb, I want to know. His brows angled at the same time, bent formed in a tight leg. The way he twisted in between his hands was too much for the thin piece of pole. He didn't say a word. You gave him an encouraging smile. He sealed his eyes tight and dropped the leg, on purpose this time. Despite all the efforts it took to ask him to ask you to come in the first place, that paled in comparison to this. Suddenly it seemed like he wished you were anywhere but right here. I can't tell you. Derek's voice was an impotent whisper. You think I'm the most annoying guy in the world. I am the most annoying guy in the world. Oh, you're not, Derek. You're fine. It was such a bad idea. It was sneaky and judgy. I shouldn't have bugged you, but I already did. It's too late. Derek's posture pulled closer and closer together as he spoke. His fists tapped against the front of his chest and his knees bent inward. The pressure building inside was exerting a real force on him. What if you don't want to be friends anymore? Last part almost disappeared before you had a chance to hear it. You looked small and lost. Derek, please, I don't want you to feel bad. The tension kept compounding, causing cracks where most words could slip through.
Well,
I had a reason why I invited you when I did, why it needed to be now. Yes? Even though his eyes creaked open, Derek wasn't looking at you, but finally he sucked in a breath and took the plunge. Luna, today is Father's Day. Your jaw dropped. Yeah, I completely forgotten that was today. You could put words together immediately, and though you were still stunned, you could put it into words. You thought I was going to be sad because it's Father's Day and I don't have a dad? Derek lowered his head and pressed his shoulders up to his ears, trying to hide from the sound of it. Well, I wasn't thinking for sure that you'd be sad. I didn't know how you're going to feel about any of it, and that was chewing at me. Derek poured out his words one after another, trying to explain himself, and the conflicted feelings he had bottled up the entire time. The floodgates had opened. It's not like I was around last year when this happened, or I couldn't help wondering if it was a normal thing, or a good time, or a low point, or whatever. But I don't live in Sunsetport. I can't walk over like it's nothing to check. I had to come up with some other dumb way to be around. Derek's speaking pace slowed, but his blinks picked up speed. His rapid flow of words went on from explanation to admonishment. It was enough for him to choke on. But that was stupid because you actually wanted to be, because if you actually wanted me to be anywhere near you today, you could have asked yourself. And your moms are just great, better than most dads. And you got Elizabeth too.
sorry.
I should have made the whole big thing out of it because I made stuff up in my head. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And then it went bone dry into silence. Derek dropped his arms to his sides and defeat. He could only look to you out the corner of his eyes. Derek had been trying to look out for you. That realization made you grateful. You hugged him. You just happened instinctively. You wrapped your arms around his shoulders. Derek's caution turned to confusion. Luna? His breath tickled your neck. After an extra squeeze, you let him go. I'll never hate you for worrying about me. Really? Not gonna tell me to call your mom to come get you and walk out the door and never talk to me again? That's what you thought was... That's what you thought was gonna happen? Maybe. I figured you'd at least say I'm a pain. Alright, you're a pain. Happy? It's done. Derek crumpled over, gripping his hands against his leg, releasing a massive sigh like he finished a marathon. Well, okay, I'm sorry still. I should have just asked you instead of creepily making you out to come over to my house so I could watch and see maybe I could figure out it without having a normal conversation. Yeah, would have worked too. The emotional exhaustion from carrying that stress in his back really had taken its toll. Derek crouched completely and plopped onto the floor. You had eased down to sit next to him. He tucked his legs up against his chest and tapped the top of his knee shyly. He was the last kid waiting to be picked for his team on the playground, and you were captain who could include him. Would you want to talk now? I think that'd be good. A ghost of a smile appeared on Derek's face. It didn't compare to the ear-to-ear grin that you're used to, but it was enough to make everything feel a little more normal, a little bit more right. Honestly, Derek, I forgot it was even Father's Day. We don't celebrate, and it doesn't matter to me at all.
What?
You did? Derek smacked his head against his legs, humiliated, but you could hear a few tiny chuckles, and you could see the way the laughter made his shoulders shake. I really dropped the ball, huh? I was driving myself crazy for nothing. That's not true. It's nice that you cared. I know I have someone who really worries about me, and that's pretty special. Derek's face tilted over to the side just for enough to see the redness tinting his cheeks. Thanks, Una. Derek waited there on the floor silently, still curled up in a ball. If there was more you needed to tell him, he wasn't going to miss it. What's it like having a dad? Is it different to how it's like with your mom?
Oh!
His parents weren't here, but his gaze automatically went to the hall that led to Mr. and Mrs. Cesaire's room. He had no idea what was on his mind, so you needed to wait for him to say it. Derek ultimately shrugged one shoulder and tilted his head back to you. It's kind of different. My mom's really mom, and my dad's a dad. Could you elaborate on that one? Sorry. He scratched at his ears. Derek heard the way of his own words just as well as you did. I think what I mean is, like, Mom's nice because she loves me and I love her and it's great. We could just be together and I don't have to grow up so fast and it's okay just the way it is. And that's not exactly how it is with my dad because I want to be like my dad and I'm not. I want to get mature and responsible and do more. I don't feel like I'm good enough when I compare myself to him. Derek blinked. He caught himself losing track of the topic. It was going where it wasn't supposed to be, and Derek put a stop to it. But it's not that bad. It isn't like he's trying to make me feel that way. He pushed a couple inches off the ground, using his heels, and tipped backward a bit, and then fell into place again. Derek looked like a tiny rocketing horse. He grinned. A slight grin cracked open between his lips as he swayed. I bet a lot of kids don't have to think that kind of thing about their dad. They just want to be like their mom, or both of their moms. Huh, interesting. It's cool you think so. I don't know if that makes sense. I want to be like me. I think that's perfect. Derek's words then slowed and stumbled. He squinted his eyes after looking at you as if it was blinding. That's the way he spoke when he forced himself to convince something he wasn't planning on admitting. Also, well, Luna, since we're talking about Mom and Dad, I wanted to tell you they do kind of know why they wanted you to come over. I didn't tell them exactly, but yesterday they somehow figured out I was worrying before I could do something to stop it, and they put it all together. I don't know how parents do that. They want to help me help you if you needed it. But they didn't have any idea that was why I was just being nosy. You didn't give me any real reason to worry. I understand. It's hard to pretend something is nothing when it's not. It's really important to you. It was, for sure. Thanks. Honestly, I feel like a bit like I do have a dad because of Mr. Holton. Cove said it wasn't your family, but he was an important figure in your life. When it came to ranking adults in your life, Mr. Holton might be in the top 3 most impactful people. He spent 5 years trying to make you feel included. It was mostly for Cove's sake, and you weren't oblivious to that, but a piece of your heart always hoped you mattered to him too. You were thrown from your quiet reminiscing by an entirely expected shout. It was almost half startling as a signature Clifford surprise. Really? Cove's dad? Derek shook his head rapidly at himself. That was not a very polite reaction.
Sorry,
it's not bad at all. I don't know a lot about Mr. Holton, but obviously you'd be way closer to him than me. Yeah, he's always been there since I was 8. Even though he doesn't set rules or try and parent me like my mom's, he doesn't really do a lot of that for his kid either. He's still a dad anyways. That's cool. Does he know? Derek hugged his legs and pressed his chin against the top of his knees, his heart-meltingly hopeful smile on his face. Oh, hey, you could do something nice for him when you get back to the neighborhood. I think Mr. Holton would appreciate it a lot. Maybe. I hope this didn't ruin your own Father's Day celebration.
no way.
He slapped a palm against the hardwood floor that made the outburst even more startling. Derek stared at you with complete seriousness. All he would want is getting a card sometime, and my bros might get him a little kid kind of gifts. Flower from the park, or a little Lego guy, or something. You being here too is for sure not going to ruin it. Don't worry about all that. Dad only wants to party all day on birthdays, but you could still come out to those anyways. That's good. Nothing would have made you feel more worse than having Derek throw away his and his family's celebration to try and give you one. But it was easy to believe what he said. He wasn't placing you. Derek wasn't a liar, even if sometimes he didn't tell you every thought and feeling in his head. Yeah, I'm glad I got 2 moms. I love them.
I get it.
I definitely get that. They're really good. That was an understatement. Your moms were some of the best people in the world. Mentioning them took you right back to the fun times you had with your family. My moms are happy sharing Mother's Day with each other for the parent-based holidays. Though, one time Mom joked about how they could switch off. One could have the actual Mother's Day to herself, and the other one could make Father's Day be the other Mother's Day. Despite Dingren's lingering awkwardness, Mom's joke still pulled some snickers from him. She would be thrilled to know that. That's compromise. Really, what a missed opportunity to not actually do it. Totally. But that was why we're never done anything for today. And you didn't say anything else. Your thoughts drifted away from Derek and even you. They floated away from the condo out the window and off to the vast summer sky. As the silence settled between you, Derek plucked at his shoelaces and chewed on the inside of his cheeks uncomfortably. When you felt the need to fix everything or make it all better, it was a major hitch when it was not your problem to solve. The air conditioning whirled in the background, though your fuzzy feeling mind's eye could picture your moms and your big sister. Then your brain and your body suddenly stopped together in full focus. Wait, what about Elizabeth? The mention of her name got the same instant reaction from Derek that you experienced. His eyebrows lifted and his mouth opened soundlessly in a small O. She acts like she's over everything, but I think I remember back when we were little kids, she would get mad on Father's Day. Maybe that's why she was so aggressive yesterday. She'd have friends who were coming over, and she didn't have friends or were coming over or anything. Mom's had work, and now I'm gone too. Derek looked hard at the front door. Was she expecting her to walk through it, or was he planning on running over to Sunset Bar to check? You had no idea.
Shoot.
I thought there might have been a chance of that. That was a horrible realization. You had abandoned your sister. Derek, do you think I could call my house? Definitely, I can do it. Derek unfolded himself, got to the floor, trotted over to the hallway for the purpose. Mounted right down in the living room, narrowed into the hallway. Set against the front wall was an off-white telephone. The phone at your house was wireless. Derek had an electrical loop line that kept the receiver going more than a couple feet away from its base. Visions of Nicholas launching a cordless phone into the air purely for his own entertainment made their way across your mind. The option that his heirs went with was one of the more practical for their family. Your sibling, however, would throw a fit if she couldn't chat with her gal pals in private. Elizabeth, you wondered what she was thinking about right now. But you wouldn't have much imagination for longer. Derek didn't waste any time punching in your number. He had it memorized. There had been many times in the past Derek used your very device to call your house so the two of you could chat about your lives and make plans and whatever else. You ended up on the other side of things, and for once got to watch it go through each of the motions used to connect with the mayor house. He stood back, perfectly straight, and pressed the phone to his ear and waited for the solitary person miles away, where he was, who could answer on the other end. Awkwardly, seconds ticked by, one at a time. You could vaguely hear the ringing coming from the receiver bouncing off the hall wall. But then a wide, eager smile pulled away across Derek's face. She had picked up the phone. "Hey, Elizabeth, it's Derek Cesare. Luna's here at my house." As chipper and polite as Derek tried to be, there was an obvious strain in his voice. He tucked his finger through one of the rubber-coated loops and twisted the stretchy phone line over and waited until it wrapped all the way around his wrist up to the tip of his hand. Did he do that when he was talking to you?
What's up?
I was wondering how things were over there. He silently attempted to fill in the other half of the conversation, based on how he was reacting, and what you knew about your sister. She was definitely asking what on earth he was calling her for. No. It merely got harder to grasp the context. Elizabeth lobbed another question. It could have been anything from, "Is Luna dead? Did you have a nice sleepover? Wink, wink." Derek's wide, panicked eyes gave you the impression it wasn't going well, whatever it was. The words on the tip of your tongue swallowed like a bitter pill. He grimaced at the wall in front of her face and did nothing else. Derek, what happened? Derek sighed and deeply clicked the receiver into the base with a limp wrist nudge. He directed an impression, unpressed, to stare at the phone. Unfortunately for him, Derek couldn't send that look over to the phone line, even if it had been dropped. Derek turned to face you directly. He fought against a deflated appearance with a frosty casual shrug. She hung up. Typical. She was mad at the person who called her was my friend, huh? It didn't help, but she sounded pretty bothered before I even said anything. Basically, she told me that unless the police, firefighters, or ambulance, or your mom's need her, that I should tell you to talk to her when you were home. That I should tell you to talk to her when you were home.
I don't know.
And that she didn't want to tell me anything. Oh. Pit began to form in the bottom of your stomach. Your sister wasn't very happy, and you felt terrible. The wish to have never called her and the wish to have never come to this place fought within you supremacy. The hall felt cramped, and he was suddenly uncomfortable being surrounded by these walls. Derek watched you helplessly, his fingers tense, clashing to playing again. A moment passed, and then let out a heavy breath. He wasn't powerless.
I've got a plan.
I have a plan. You do? Derek sprinted through the living room area into his bedroom. The clatter of drawers opening, papers flying across, came through his open door. You slowly stepped to the edge of the hall, trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening on the other side of the condo. This is going to be hectic, really hectic. You gotta make sure you drink enough water in your day. Talking a lot definitely takes a lot out of you. As soon as he came bounding out again, clearly successful at something, Derek had tossed a stack of colorful folded pamphlets across the surface of the coffee table. You jogged to meet him over there. You couldn't tell what they were for from a distance. Let's bring the party to Elizabeth. These are bus schedules and stuff. I only gotta look at what times they are and we can leave. How do you think of that so fast? He chuckled mischievously. You know what I say, it's good to be prepared. And I did wonder about this kind of thing before. I can't drive, but what if there's an accident or another emergency or whatever, and I need to be someplace right away? I already knew a lot of public transportation suckers of that. Derek began to shuffle the papers around and he flashed you a big bright grin.
Aha!
But I did think I'd be pulling this out so I could go see Elizabeth of all people. Derek laughed lightheartedly over the joke. The words didn't feel very breezy to you. That was because if he was honest, it wasn't about your sister. He spent time saying ways to get to Sunset and Bird for his friends, for Cove, and for you. With you and him living away from each other and not going to the same school, sometimes it seemed like maybe you should stop being a piece of his life once he left town. This proved you definitely disappear for Derek. He cared about you even when you knew you weren't there, and you can count on him even more than he had known. When you were stuck inside your own head, Derek had his nose in the brochures. He pressed his palms on the table, fervently scanning the timetables, and rambled more about his scheme. There isn't a direct line for Sunset Bird. It's kind of a small place. We can take a bus to the Rio station and get on a smaller shuttle for the tourists. Derek's hands lifted from and then hit the smooth surface under him, making a solid smack noise. He was done searching. His gaze flickered up to your face. Is that okay? Are we seriously gonna do this? I'm as serious as you are. His absolute conviction was enough to convince you. You nodded. We can leave a note for Mom about what happened, or... Derek packed up his pamphlets, sticking them to the crook of his arm. He twisted his head behind him, but whispered to you covertly over his shoulder. If it makes you feel better, we might be able to get back before she even knows. We should tell her.
Yeah.
One sec. Derek dashed back to the room with all the bus schedules on his arm. He shoved them into something and then ran out to rejoin at the front of the condo with his bag swung over his shoulder. Next, he went to the kitchen and grabbed a notepad and pen from the counter. He hopped onto the tiptoes to lean over and scribbled a few rows of explanation on paper. He jabbed the bun to retract the pen nib with his thumb and set it down alongside the notes.
Let's go.
Let's do it. You're right. You scooped up your own backpack and the two of you locked the now empty apartment behind you. At a brisk pace, Derek led the way out of the condo complex down the city sidewalks. You had to weave through the crowds of people making their own way across town. Most of them were much older and taller than you were. Between the mass of strangers and the immense skyscrapers bearing down on you from all sides, you felt like a very small part of you had a far bigger world. He took Derek's hands. He wrapped his own fingers around yours and held tight. They gave you reassurance that you hoped it would, and you were in this together. You pushed forward until you reached the nearest bus stop. A group had already gathered in the same spot for the same purpose. Derek just didn't fight to reach the front of the pack. He just kept to the fringes. You waited for anywhere from 5 minutes to 50 minutes. It was pretty impossible for you to track the time accurately when you had felt every single sluggish second hit you like a brick. No matter how long it actually was, it was enough time to think. A part of you had felt as though you couldn't possibly seriously get on a bus and get back to Sunset Bar without any of your parents. That just wouldn't happen. That probably was why you went along with Derek's impulse as quickly as the idea had struck him, but reality hit you like a bus when the actual bus turned a corner and came your way. Gave Derek a hand another squeeze. You responded by tugging her a little bit closer to him. The massive vehicle hit its brakes and slowed to a halt. The doors opened to let out those who had arrived at their destination and accept any riders. The crowd jostled together and filtered from the door. You and Derek went to the tail end of the group. You had enough change in your pockets to pay for the fare. Derek flashed his bus pass for his entry. The city bus was overflowing with people as the streets were. You had to shuffle while turned to your side to get through the aisle without knocking into the arms and legs of other passengers. There was barely enough space to breathe. You midsummer days had never been more miserable. You couldn't even find seats that were side by side. Instead, the two of you had to settle for 2 aisle seats that were across the way in 1 row diagonal from each other. That meant you had to let go of Derek, which was the worst of it all. The automatic doors quickly swung closed. You rocked as the wheels began to turn. You relaxed as best as you could, already committed to going for the ride. Derek didn't attempt to start a conversation, not that he really could in the hectic space with the distance between you. He'd become completely focused on watching your stop. He had a destination he needed to get you to, and he was going to do that no matter what. More stops passed by until eventually Derek leaned his chest over the open space to send a quick message. His tone was breathy like a whisper, way too loud to actually really be whispering. This is it. He shifted upright immediately and tugged on the bell, marking this as a stop as the curve along the curve. Marking this as a stop for the bus driver. Soon the bus came to a cautious halt along the edge of the curb. Once at a full stop, the doors popped open. You can repeat the awkward shimmy through the aisle so you could exit. When you landed your feet at the cracked ground, you exhaled in satisfaction. You had made it. This is really good. On Derek's first step to the station, he pulled one of his brochures out of his pocket and flipped it open. He must have kept that single pamphlet with the necessary details when packing the rest of the collection away. Derek was as prepared as always. He held it up to his face, mapping out the station using the guide like a treasure hunter. You wandered around the wide-open floor pan, searching up and down for the section where the shutters would load passengers. You were the first to spot the one vehicle head toward the tiny tourist town, and made your stop in place. Derek. Yeah? With the sound of his name, he lifted up his face above the station map, and you saw what you saw. Oh. The shadow was barely 1/4 of the size of the bus. It was a glorified fan. You only recognized it for what it was thanks to the unusual pale orange paint job and along the word shuttle painted in blue across the doors. He tucked his bus schedule pamphlet into his back pocket and gave you a thumbs up. Derek bought tickets at a nearby customer service counter. There's no humoring the possibility of you buying your own ticket or paying for both. That wasn't a hill to die on today. Then you were ready for another ride. You poked your head inside the cabin. Only a handful of other travelers were nestled between the 4 rows of seats. From the seat cushions to the smell, the shuttle was immensely more agreeable than the bus. You were even able to get spots side by side this time. Derek, though, wasn't in any more mood to talk. The physical atmosphere might have improved, but the discomfort he felt on the side was still eating at him. You could only sit in silence. For all the gnawing tension, you did make it. The shuttle inevitably came to a stop in Sunset parking lot. The car was switched off and the driver gave permission for guests to leave, while the other riders leisurely shuttled around bags and sat by their feet and readjusted their hats. Derek hopped right off into the freedom. Derek then took a couple stumbling steps after his leap from the car and then stood in his place. He watched for your next move, counting on your guidance to finish the journey. It was time to switch roles. Sunset Bird was your turf, not his. You spun in a single circle, scanning the area for clues as to which of the multiple big, flat, mostly empty parking lots you landed in. You swung back and around, and you got a glimpse behind the shuttle and spotted the corner of the grocery store. You couldn't have been closer to home. We're almost there, this way. You waved your hand over your shoulder and toward the main street to rally your single troop for that charge.
Nice!
Awesome, nice work, Luna. You made a break for it and launched across the blacktop. You ran with him. There was no time to lose. Derek was so fixated he might have accidentally leave you in the dust if you didn't push yourself. You flew out of the parking lot and dashed out the sidewalk you've seen a million times before. From there was a turn into the residential area. Before you knew it, you arrived at the top of the hill of your street. You were so close. The decline of the road propelled your steps even faster. Derek had almost crashed into you when both of you dove toward the entry of your house. You caught yourself by bracing your hands against the front door. It took you a second to separate your singing palms from the wood so you can get your keys out. But you got in the lock and turned the key and pulled. Finally, huffing and puffing, you stumbled inside, and you were home. After everything, you almost didn't know what to expect when you laid your eyes on the scene. But it was your living space, exactly as it was every day in your life. Not a thing was out of place. The low hum of the fridge was the only sound. Elizabeth clearly hadn't torn the house in an emotional rampage. I thought you didn't know what her own room looked like. Luna? You snapped your head back to the sound of... There she was, standing on the first step of the stairs. Elizabeth. Her mouth remained open despite not saying anything else. An eyebrow arched high on her forehead. Hi. Hey, is that why you were calling? To tell me you're coming back was way early? No. You explained everything directly. There was no point in beating around the bush, not after how much you went through to do what you did. Me and Derek wanted to see if you were okay because you were alone here on Father's Day. She let out a single derived bark of laughter and was way more threatening to spill out. It wasn't the worst reaction you could have gotten, all things considered. How did that even come up? The tip of Derek's foot scuffed at the wooden floor Mom kept sparkling clean. He meekly confessed his part in the debacle.
Well...
I want Luna to spend the night at my place so I can make sure they weren't sad or something. That's why I was hoping for anyways, but it wasn't a great plan. He couldn't help sneaking a shy glance at you. The mocking humor that colored her face was wiped away in an absolute deadpan way. She said 2 words.
Oh.
That's adorable. That was simply enough to end the conversation. Derek had no comeback, and your sister was simply stared blankly. Was that a mistake? Should we not have come? A seriously uncomfortable 3-way staring contest commenced. You kept your focus locked on your sister. She did the same to you. Derek flipped-flopped between Elizabeth and you. Then Elizabeth caved. She pinched the bridge of her nose and gurged dramatically. Fine, you kids win today. Today was annoying. Not because I cared that I only get to have 2 moms and can't celebrate Daddy Day, because every year everyone else is busy and I'm stuck doing nothing. And so no, I wasn't in sunshine and rainbows kind of mood. It didn't help that you ended up getting off that boat either. And then he called me. She whipped an accusatory finger right at Derek's chest.
Rude.
This guy was able to throw a party out of nowhere and decide, well, during that you get to give me a ring while I was stuck in the house like a loser. Rude. That's why I hung up. Her smirk returned, much more honest than before. I didn't think you were going to race across the city to keep me company. That kind of affection, teasing from your only older sister, warmed your heart. It was special, and all the discomfort was worth it. You could already tell that she would be something to laugh about for years to come. Derek remained serious. He blinked in rapid succession, mustered up the will to continue with his regretful appeal. Elizabeth, I'm really sorry for not thinking about this more. Elizabeth just cut that off right there. She swished a hand in front of her face, trying to physically bat away Derek's sentiments.
No.
Don't be, please. Save your energy. She settled the tips of her fingers against the center of her forehead, her other hand resting on their hip, and she just shut off to the side. It's not your job to babysit me. You're not my big brother, and I'm not the one you like. Elizabeth was sassy as ever. Derek's overly reflective maturity seemed childish when cast in that light. A dark red blush grew across Derek's cheeks, but he smiled. It was a good reminder that he demanded a lot more from himself than others did. As if for the first time, his sister praised you and Derek, huddled together, sweating frumpy from the journey. Oh dear, where are my manners? I got guests and I haven't even offered them a drink. She shrugged one arm while sashaying over to the kitchen and opening the fridge. Not very politely, Elizabeth shouted out while sticking her head in the chilled shelves. What do you want?
Thanks.
Just water, please. Thanks. Tropical juice mix.
Uh-huh.
A water and tropical juice. She set a bottle of water and a cartoon tropical juice promptly on the counter, along with 2 glasses. Elizabeth poured a glass of juice for herself and filled the glass with tropical juice for you too. One more time, Elizabeth's demure hostess she was shouted at you from the kitchen. Come and get it. She punctuated the statement by bumping the fridge door shut with her hip, and walked back to the living room, taking a sip of her juice. Derek took it upon himself to pick up both of your drinks, and he went straight to the kitchen, grabbed the drinks, and then returned to offer you yours. You accepted it from him. Thanks. It made your sister snicker over the rim of her glass. Her gaze stayed on you while she lowered herself slowly to sound the floor. She had a quick look with Derek, but ultimately joined your sister on the ground. The 3 of you arranged yourselves in a small circle shape, each with your little drink in hand. It almost felt like being a kid in kindergarten again. Elizabeth lifted her cup over the center of the group.
Come on.
To this auspicious occasion, cheers to us. As sarcastic as her tone was, the fun she was having was genuine. Happy other Mother's Day. Cheers. He trusted his own drink out in celebration before bringing you back toward his chest. He twisted off the cap of the water bottle and gulped it down about half in one go. Derek idly wiped out his mouth when Elizabeth asked a flat question. How did you actually get here? Is Mrs. Eyre idling out in a minivan out there? Derek's reply was perfectly cheery. After the long way there, his spark was finally coming back.
Nope.
He took the bus. A bus? And the shuttle. None of the buses go straight to Sunset Bird, but we made it. Well, obviously you can see that.
Okay.
Okay, another question. Are you going to be completely grounded for this? I left it out for my mom. She'll understand. This was an emergency, or it could have been one. Huh? We're on a mission. Elizabeth rested her eyes shut and took another long sip of juice. I won't tell our moms. Thanks. We're all partners in crime. That's Mike. If I was, would you want to hang out for a little while? Oh, we can't go anywhere. Derek jumped right on board with the idea. He had an answer from us any problem. Play a board game. It'll be fun. We'll get a little time.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Me too.
Okay.
Right. The 3 of you agree on a classic game and did 1 round. So Monopoly. Soon, stacks of fake money, tiny figurines, and tokens were scattered around the living room while each of you fought for financial supremacy. Elizabeth shifted to lay on her stomach, and Derek sat up vigilant for anyone who tried to cheat the system. He really felt like a kid again. This game eventually got way out of hand. It was mutually decided to be a 3-way tie. It was a nice time. When it was really over, Elizabeth spoke up. Alright, you gotta go. She stretched her legs and arms spread out wide. Being boring all day is going to be the least of our worries if Moms come back and he managed to magically appear in the living room. Right. Instead, we gotta magically vanish into thin air. Her eyes narrows, looking between you and Derek. Enjoy what's left of your little sleepover. Which, I'd say it's been a pretty good time already, so... Derek's mouth dropped open fruitlessly, and then he closed it again. He didn't know what to say to that. Finally, he waved and chirped out a generic farewell. Bye, Elizabeth. See you around. Gave her a hug. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and staged annoyed. She couldn't take the smile off her face, and she ultimately returned the gesture, wrapping her arms around your neck.
Goodbye.
Bye. With your mission accomplished, the two of you returned to the wide open world. Returning to the parking lot was far more leisurely trip than your arrival had been. There was a time before it'd take off again. You drifted ahead with the lazy white clouds above you. The fluffiness made them think of marshmallows. The pale orange 12-seater came into sight, parked at the far edge of the lot. You and Derek got your tickets to ride and hopped on. A few scattered tourists in their sunset hats and floor-patterned shorts were seated throughout the cabin. The small number of people in the space still felt cramped because of the limited room in the car. You could smell the sunscreen in the air. In a slow, curving motion, the shuttle pulled out. Derek sat rigidly, silently tapping his pointer finger against the top of his knee for the entire trip. No words were exchanged by anyone except for a few rules and updates mumbled out by the driver. People were tired from their own long adventures out in the world. You can only imagine what the stranger sharing the shuttle had been through while barely audible acoustic guitar tracks played on the radio. Eventually, the shuttle arrived. Each person went their separate ways, except for you and Derek, who stayed by one another's side of the pair. He navigated the station with the maps he had tucked in his back pocket as a guide. And finally, you sat down in the deep, well-worn fabric of a city bus seat for the last time. When the bus pulled out this time, Derek wiped his brow with his wristband. You made it back to the Derek City. No mortifying calls would have to be made from your overpriced bus stop pay phone to beg one of your parents to come get you. Derek slipped his lower into his seat and stretched his legs out into the aisle. The bus wasn't even half full, so making a little extra room for himself wasn't getting in anyone's way this time. On the side, the sun was still dipping under the horizon, giving the air of relief from the sweltering heat. It all came together to make the metal tube of public transportation less suffocating, totally incomparable to the experience you had in the height of the afternoon. Now it was safe to relax.
Phew.
Good job, us. He chirped with a mixture of relief and fulfillment, like you had just had an 8-hour shift at a serious adult company. We're victorious people. I really appreciate all this, you know. Derek made a big show of swatting his hand nonchalantly, which is pretty much completely preluded from the casual gesture. The grin on his face couldn't even pretend to be unaffected. He was thrilled.
I try.
No worries, Luna. Siblings look out for siblings. You look directly at you. Friends look out for friends. I know that I can count on you to help me out with the bros when I need it. Alright, I'm here for you too.
Yeah.
You're my pal. Rested your head against Derek's. Gently shifted over to the side of your face nestled against your seat neighbor. Derek's eyes flushed to close with a sweet sigh. You were snuggled in for the final leg of the journey, and all he had to do was wait. There's a soft vibration in the back of the bus. It slowly went up in your spine all the way down the tips of your toes. During the ride before, the sensation had frayed at your nerves. Now it was soothing. With every stop that passed, your eyelids grew heavier. If yours wasn't just the fourth one down the line, you might have fallen asleep. You and Derek were the only ones who had gone off at that point. The two of you hopped from the front door and the bus onto the sidewalk. Derek leisurely retraced his familiar path you had gone on with him, matching step for step. It was peaceful, and with how you had been dozing off, it almost felt like walking through a dream. Finally, you arrived at the Cesare condo after a long, eventful afternoon away. You may not have lived there, but seeing that door made you feel welcomed and safe. Derek clicked his keys into the slot and pulled the handle forward. All traces of sleepiness that had lingered in your eyes were instantly wiped away. Derek's unavoidable tripped the wire on the mini explosion.
Derek's back!
The condo wasn't nearly as empty as it was when you left. The whole rest of the family had arrived before you. They were gathered together on the couch, bar stools, except for Nicholas, who had jumped to his feet and launched himself at his brother. His short arms circled around Derek's legs. It was an interaction that had a dozen times before, maybe hundreds of times before. That was a hallmark of their unique sibling relationship. Derek fulfilled his part of the tradition, stroked Nicholas's hair. At the same time, he offered the rest of the family a laid-back greeting. Hey.
Good evening.
Good evening to you both. Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome back. There was an annoying lift to her tone and a quirk in her smile. Did you have a good trip? She clutched clearly between her fingers if that was a piece of paper. He didn't have to think too hard to guess what that was. The note he left explained what happened.
What a day.
It's best that you were able to spend time with your family. Your parents were both perfectly contented. You had their full support for going on an adventure. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. It was good. Derek gratefully replied to his parents, all while sneaking a warm gaze at you. Thanks for not grounding Derek. We're never gonna grind Derek. He punished himself so much that we don't need to pile it on. Mom, please. Nicholas simply held tight to Derek's jeans the entire time, thinking happy he was there, and totally unaware what the older people were talking about. George stood in between his parents with his arms pressed to his sides. He had been listening with his amusement, his thin eyebrows pinched and his lips pursed.
Now what?
Mrs. Eyre snickered cheerfully, resting her actual cheek against Mistress's Eyre.
I hate to say it.
We better turn right around and go back the way you came. It's time to bring Luna home. But don't worry, I'll drive. Oh, yeah. With a wink and a grin, Derek scratched the back of his head. You chuckled right along with his mom. You had a great time staying with the Cesare family, but you're very much looking forward to seeing your moms and being reunited with your own sibling after a humorously short time apart. There would be plenty more moments of fun and laughter to come when you were. Thanks to Derek, it was truly an occasion worth commemorating. And with that, I'm going to save this. And I hope you guys have a good day, night, week, month of your lives, and may the stars forever guide your path wherever they might lead you into the future. Bye-bye, everybody, and hope to see you next time.